Has the recent market volatility put your retirement plan to the test? See if your retirement is still on track by scheduling a retirement checkup with Lauren Merkel. During this 15-minute phone call, we'll discuss if your retirement plan could be disrupted by long-term market volatility. We'll also analyze your current tax plan and provide strategies on how to take advantage of the market. Go to merkelplan.com and click Book Now to schedule your retirement checkup today. The morning news on YourIowa.com is brought to you by the Commission on U.S. Territories, striving for equal representation around the globe, and by Keep Iowa First, committed to keeping the Iowa caucuses the first in the nation contest in selecting the presidency of the United States. And now, here's your host, Brent Roske.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. We are going to be, well, let's do this. Hold on one sec, folks. There we go. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, and what I'm just a little bit late to the computer this morning because I was catching up with all the news yesterday. I was doing some production work yesterday, and let's just jump into some tweets. This kind of sums it up here. Admiral Mike Franken, another shooting, another round of grief, another opportunity for the NRA to twist a lie, another false bravado by the Second Amendment circle, more prayers but little thought. This is utterly ridiculous. He's, of course, referring to the shootings in Colorado and how it affects us here in Iowa. Let's take a look at what the Bleeding Heartland says. And the timing on this is just incredible. Just now, in a 31-17 vote along party lines, the Iowa Senate has approved a bill eliminating all concealed carry permits. Despite what Republicans claim, this bill will make it easier for Iowans who can't pass a background check to acquire firearms. State Senator Claire Celsey sums it up this way: 10 dead people in Boulder, killed by a man with an AR-15, while my Senate colleagues and I debated ending Iowa's fair permitting and background check system. I'm sick about this, especially after Atlanta last week. We must pass national gun legislation now. And then Tom Hall, who's a colleague from Los Angeles, there it is. I mean, a list of all the mass shooting events in this country, and the weapon of choice, an AR-15. So stunningly sad news out of Colorado. DC statehood is coming back to the forefront, and I thought this tweet summed it up quite well. Senator Mike Rounds, the Founding Fathers never intended for Washington, D.C. to be a state. Well, Bernice King with the King Foundation said the Founding Fathers never intended for me to be free. I think that is a very succinct way of saying that times change and thoughts need to progress. This Friday, Matt Del Negro will be on the program. There he is co-starring with Kevin Bacon. Matt Del Negro and Kevin Bacon star in, it's a great program, folks. It's called City on a Hill. It is on the Showtime network, and Matt Del Negro will be with us this Friday. If you maybe, Matt Del Negro's been in a bunch of projects, The West Wing, The Sopranos. He was also on, I don't know. There's my film I did with Matt, Chasing the Hill. Here he is in City on a Hill. So we are very excited to have Mr. Del Negro on the program. And did you see Friday's episode had former Senator Tom Harkin live from the Bahamas? So grateful to Mr. Harkin for joining us. He was literally in shorts and bare feet walking through the sand in the Bahamas. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day, sir. No, but very grateful to Mr. Harkin to be on the show. And did you see also on that episode, my buddy Golden Globe winner Sally Kirkland? There we are at an Oscar party at the Beverly Hills Hilton a couple of years ago. Sally told us all about how the process of when she was nominated for an Oscar and won the Golden Globe. Just a fascinating story. And of course, there's CJ Perry was on the show last week, co-starring in Bruce Willis's new sci-fi action thriller, Cosmic Sin. The interview with CJ Perry is online now. Folks, we have a great show today. A bunch of Iowans on the show today. Iowa filmmaker Kristian Day is on. Creative Visions, Pascha Morgan is on. And our good friend Britt Slater. Britt Slater with Britt's Corners, life hacks and snacks. Thanks for tuning in this morning. We'll be right back with Kristian Day right after a short message from the Iowa School of Rock.
School of Rock is now in session in Iowa, and we're ready to help make musicians. In our patented performance-based program, students learn music in one-on-one lessons, then have band practice in a fun, safe learning environment, all leading up to their big show. Guitar, bass, piano, drums, and vocals, our local professionals teach the skills you need to be a rock star. Come check us out and get a free lesson with no strings attached. Locations in West Des Moines and Marion. Visit schoolofrock.com to learn more and start your musical journey today.
Welcome back to the program. There he is, Iowa filmmaker Kristian Day. He's got the haircut award for the day. How are you, buddy?
Well, I'm great. Yeah, I have this David Lynch thing going on right now.
It's something. You and I have similar experiences. We were both doing work yesterday and kind of came late to the news. We're gonna send our best wishes to the folks in Colorado. But what's interesting is you get in the bubble of production and the rest of the world gets shut out quite quickly. Kristian Day's an Iowa filmmaker. Why don't you walk us into what is it? Because we both done work in California and in Iowa. What are some of the differences and the benefits of doing work here in Iowa?
In some ways, it can be easier. Some ways, we don't have all the red tape that a large film market might be used to. So, locations are sometimes a lot easier to acquire. We don't have unions breathing down our neck, and there's a little more freedom. But at the same time, the resources that, if I'm in a larger market and I need something, I can usually get it pretty quickly. Here, when crews come in and they say like, well, if we're down in, let's say, Osceola, and they're like, well, we need to bring a Fisher dolly in by 3 o'clock today, and it's 10 a.m. I'm like, that's a great wish, but I don't think that's going to happen today.
Yeah. The sign says Des Moines, not Chicago. Yeah, I've come up against that as well. That you get so used to resources in the bigger markets with film, especially now with the tools. The entry, the burden to entry isn't so cost prohibitive in a lot of tools, but yeah, Fisher Dolly is just one of those heavy, large, expensive tools that you're only going to get in a major market and have it shipped in. We're not anti-union in Iowa. Just want to throw that out there. We definitely work well with all the film unions, but there's so many different pockets right now of great creative individuals here in Iowa. We've got Nick Bush is doing miniature work out there, and you've got Bruce Bales is an amazing cinematographer in town. We had Brandon Ost on Friday with his film Inherited, and just isn't it incredible? I always tell people you come to Iowa and there's this great bastion of creativity. I mean, what's your background here, Kristian? I think you're from here originally, yeah?
Well, I'm originally from the Quad Cities, so I was born in Rock Island. So I was actually on the Illinois side, but I graduated high school from Cedar Rapids in 2004, and then I moved to Denver for a little while, and I was there for college. And when I finished college, I moved to Des Moines for no reason except I didn't want to live in the same town my graduating class did, or where my family was. And Iowa was the biggest city. And at that time, I was like 22, 23. My career was starting to take off as I was actually doing Foley work, and I was doing composing at the beginning of everything. And then that slowly morphed into, instead of paying off my student loans, I bought some film equipment and started making shorts. And as I tell people, along my journey of being a filmmaker, it has been a lot of financial missteps, but have all landed in the right place, I think.
pursuing an artistic career is always a bit of a gamble. So yeah, when people say you're putting film equipment on a credit card, I don't understand. You're supposed to be investing in your future, and
I know.
to get paid gigs in this work, to connect the dots and make it into a career is a challenge. I showed a clip of this. Let's look at it again now. Neither Kristian or I were involved in this production, but this is what Brandon Ost did in Iowa, and I wanted to point this out. Brandon was on the show last week. You can watch that interview. But I wanted to point this out. We did some filming here in Iowa and literally got permission to film, in some incredible locations, including the Capitol, including the airport. What Brandon in his recent film here, he needed an airplane. They got an airplane. There it is. They needed a house that was getting torn down. They got a house that was getting torn down. And what you find here in Iowa is that so many Iowans, and certainly there's exceptions to this, but so many Iowans don't, in Los Angeles, they're barraged about, can I film at your restaurant? Can I film at your house? But here you've got a little more leeway with that. So you've got projects like this that with a few phone calls, some charm and some goodwill, you can get access and do things, that in a lot of bigger cities you can't. And I've said, I heard the term twice on that episode that Iowa, it was only possible in Iowa. The other person was when he started his comedy club Tiki's here in town. And I hear that a lot. We filmed it at the airport. We filmed 8 takes. We took the whole concourse and the airport was open and the TSA people were stepping out of the shot. It was incredible. So, I mean, you hear about stories like that. And I say, it's only in Iowa. What's your feeling on that, Kristian?
I 100% agree. There's a lot of things I've been able to accomplish either in my own productions or when someone brings me on as a field producer or a production manager, that a few phone calls, I can probably make that happen. I was able to, I think it was 2 years ago, we were looking for a strip of road near Iowa City that we could do a car crash on. And it took it took a few phone calls with some people I knew who knew someone else to make it all kind of come together. That's one of the biggest things is in the state. The term Iowa Nice kind of goes both ways, and my whole my mantra with doing things here is just always be a good person and never burn those bridges. So I try to consistently stay in contact with people, just like a simple, hey, how you doing, every couple of weeks, just to keep things, friendly, because when these things come up, I usually need things to be, reacted very quickly. Because everything, I worked as an AD for a long time, and, I'm one of those guys, I first minute on set, I'm like, we are already behind. We have to, we're always rushing. We're always on the go, and we don't have time to really, well, maybe next week we might be able to get this for you. I'm like, nope. I need this right now. I think the biggest thing is we retain that charm that we have been noted for around the globe.
They say on film sets you're filming Lawrence Arabia in the morning and local cable access in the afternoon because you're running against the time, you're running against the sun. So what's been keeping you busy lately? Iowa production slowed a bit, but for the most part, we've been filming for a long time here in the pandemic. What has been keeping you busy?
Well, I never really stopped. I was down for maybe 3 weeks after the pandemic hit. And then I went right into some true crime projects last March.
Not participating, but filming them.
Yes, just filming them. We were filming recreations for a company out of Canada. They came down to Iowa. Iowa never officially shut down like Los Angeles or New York. For better or for worse, we kept working, and it has been, a lot of outside productions came through. Now, recently, I've been however this happened, I started getting really involved with working as a casting director for both national and regional commercials. Not that I had any interest in it, but, there was this call for fresh faces. And so I've been working with a lot of local companies as well as out-of-state companies. I recently was admitted to the Location Managers Guild, which was my first guild, and inspired by you for being a PGA member. I said I want to start making some career moves, and it's been very good. As far as like Some stuff I can talk about, some stuff I can't. I've been working with my buddy Dylan Sires. We've been working on a project for the last 6 years on the Evansdale, the 2 girls from Evansdale that were kidnapped back in, I want to say it was 2012 or 2015. It's been about 8 years now. That's where we were shooting yesterday when we finished our last interview and we heard the news in Colorado as we were loading out. It's things like that kind of we just take a minute and stop. At the end of the day, no matter what our mission is, I look at what we do as it is entertainment, and then I see things like that happen. Then I question, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Because there's things like this that happen that are very important. I mean, I'm very grateful for the career we have in this industry, but I look at real things that are going on in this world, and then it's like, maybe we should be doing something to affect and change, rather than entertainment.
Well, I tell you, my background, I went into entertainment to get a larger, to figure out how to work the megaphone, as it were, to create projects. And then, when I am fortunate enough, and it hasn't happened a ton of times, but when I'm fortunate enough to mount a feature production or even this program, then that's a way to get involved in the conversation. So learning those skills, and folks, if you don't know, Kristian is one of the leading, if not the leading TV shoot producers in the state here. So happy to have him on the show. And you mentioned the guilds. I'm one of 3 members in the Producers Guild here in the state. And like anything else, you're going to get out of it what you kind of put into it. You got to invest time and all that sort of thing. But congratulations on location managers. And it's so interesting. People don't think about all the different, film is the collection of artists' crafts. Everybody's represented, and you can see it when they're not. When you've got 10 artists show up and then the 11th is just collecting a paycheck, you can see it pretty quickly. But so if you have lived in Los Angeles like I have in the past, would you recommend Iowa as a difference, as a new home, as a new base camp for someone from California? Or, what are your thoughts overall of the Iowa creative community and the fostering or not of the creative pursuits here?
I think there's a huge opportunity, and I do recommend it, especially post-pandemic. We learned a lot about working through Zoom and remotely, and I think there's an opportunity for people to for productions to come back here. There obviously needs to be a lot of growth. We don't really have rental houses. That's a huge thing. And so the first thing they ask me is like, what if I came out there? Like, is this like a Canadian type of situation? And I'm like, no, not really. But you have that. It's still sort of a ground zero of laying the work. I often, when I explain the film industry to people, it's like a lot like construction. You make a building, and then you go make another building. So there's an opportunity for that here, with a lot of untouched land and a lot of there's a lot of old factories and a lot of space. Chicago's incentive program's been wonderful, and they're starting to spread outside of Chicago, even towards Western Illinois, Eastern Iowa, still staying on the Eastern Illinois side, but taking over warehouses for sound stages, which I think is great, and populating areas that are not a major city, which is also great. I know the Quad Cities have started to get productions taking over some of their civic center type places that aren't being used due to the pandemic. So there's a lot that can be done, and I think what Iowa really needs is one good film to come through to be successful and show what money can be spent in a market, the economic impact of it. Just as an example, we did play-by-play back in 2017, seasons 2 and 3, and they dropped $4 million into Polk County over a period of 3 months. So if we can maybe see that again, I just don't think anyone was paying attention back in 2017. I think it's changed a little bit now, but I think there's a great opportunity for it.
Yeah, I'll make a plug for the caucuses. The Traveling Roadshow of Politics comes through and gives a lot of money to local endeavors as well. So we like it when big things come into town. And finally, as you mentioned, Iowa never really closed for productions, and not even making this a political comment, because I think a lot of businesses obviously flourished in Iowa because of that. I've been talking about Associated Press did a comparison between California and Florida, and how, like, Florida, there was 1,000 arrests there this weekend, so people have gone a little overboard. But they were comparing apples to apples, and they said, well, at the end of the day, the morbid death rate, sadly, was about the same. The sickness rate was about the same, but Florida business is doing so much better, and that's not always the barometer of how we wage success in this world. But was there much fallout to keeping production open in Iowa? Were people getting sick, or were productions going on?
You know what? The nice thing is, when we really kicked into gear last summer, we were able to be separated a lot more. I immediately, when the union medics offered their COVID compliance training, I signed up. I think it was within the first month, and a few more of us did. So we were able to implement things to be able to keep moving. I will say that a lot of local production didn't necessarily take on those types of things like they did. I was having to implement a lot of the COVID compliance with a lot of New York and LA, and then again the Canadian companies that were coming through, who specifically asked us to have a compliance plan. So I was writing compliance plans every week. Some stuff could translate over, some couldn't. We did a show for Discovery has a new OTT platform, and we shot down in Ottumwa for 3 weeks. I was on it from this first show that I've ever been on, from like literally day one to the end of shooting. I was on it for 6 weeks. It was on Tom Arnold and his sister and the meth epidemic that took place in Ottumwa in the late 80s. And we had to, the compliance, the COVID compliance for that was really strict. We have a 16-passenger van and only 3 people can be in them. We are kind of confined to our hotel rooms after hours. No going out, no doing anything, no work, no hanging out with the crew. We had a second unit. The first unit can't be hanging out with the second unit. PAs can't be touching camera cases because we would have to wipe everything down before they touched it. It was tricky. And I only had seen 1 or 2 people that actually ended up getting tested positive for COVID. But a lot of us were really on top of it. I mean, I had almost like a standing appointment to get my brain scrambled every 2 weeks on Mondays down at the at Test Iowa, just to be on top of it. Because, for me to go down for work, if I tested positive, I mean, I'm out at work 2 weeks, and that could be a dangerous thing. We still operate in the unfortunate world. If someone calls you and you tell them no, and they go to someone else, they're going to start going to that other person because they're the first. They know that they'll probably get a yes out of that person. So, a lot of us just tried our best to be on top of it and do the best we can to stay healthy and keep our entire crew healthy.
Kristian Days, Iowa filmmaker. Kristian, you have a website out there. You get some great clips. I know your horror movie. How do people find you on the web?
Well, KristianDay.com. I just recently revamped it, and it has links to my Vimeo portfolio. Yes, the horror piece, Bath Bomb, was commissioned by Crypt TV back in 2018. Still gets people. Yeah, you know what? There's certain things on my career I was like, man, this is what I'm really proud of. And then I look at something like here, I'm like, this is cool. But the person who likes some of this other stuff may not necessarily like this other thing.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show today. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Pascha Morgan. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. We'll be right back. 15-second message.
There's a new spin on casual dining near Drake University. Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers. Craveable faves, flatbreads, delicious burgers, frozen cocktails, and crazy cool vibe. Get to Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers today.
Folks, welcome back to the show. There he is on his front porch. Pascha Morgan, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's always good to see you. Mr. Morgan and I worked on a couple campaigns together, and we met through State Representative Akeo Abdul Samad, and are always happy to say his name out in the world and see his face. But so just to kind of jump into it, we're changing gears a little bit. We were talking about creative with Kristian, but Pascha, I think your outlook is so interesting because you moved here from Texas. And you've lived here now. What? You've been here 3 years, yeah? 2 years?
Yeah, that's
3
about 3. Yeah.
And then you also were a part of a protest that you created where you literally walked back to Texas, which was incredible. We were documenting that and got the word out to some really interesting folks about that trip that you did. But I just to kind of jump into the conversation, you moved here from Texas to Iowa, and I know your reports when I first met you were pretty glowing, but it seems like maybe the shine has worn off that a bit. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm wondering what's your report card right now on this state?
On Iowa. Iowa. I still do. I still enjoy Iowa. There's still a difference in. There's still a difference in how I feel about how the people, particularly Des Moines, not Iowa, but there's still. Des Moines is an oasis in the middle of a very conservative desert. And so, I mean, Des Moines my issue with Texas was that a lot of it was the oppression of its people, not the people themselves. I love Iowa. I think that Iowa is a great state. I think the people are great. I think that just like every state around the nation, our lawmakers have a lot to do and a lot to step up, particularly our Republican lawmakers. And I think that some of the new bills that are being represented in or trying to push through in our government right now, the Iowa government, are a little disappointing and more Texas-like than they were when I moved up here.
Let's throw a tweet up here again. This is Bleeding Heartland online publication, and this is just yesterday. 31-17 vote along party lines. The Iowa Senate approves eliminating all concealed carry permits. Now what that means, folks, is you walk into a store, you buy a pistol, and then you put it in your back pocket, and now that's legal in this state. It's not been signed into law yet, but that's what the Iowa Senate. The Iowa House has been going a little. Out in the fringes, we will say it politely, but for the Iowa Senate to pass this, I'm very surprised. I don't know what in the world the benefit of having Iowa be a concealed carry state is. What's the benefit of that? Who is championing? Hey, we want everyone walking around with concealed weapons. I don't know what in the world could be the benefit of this.
Well, if you look into some of the bills that have been presented or the things that Governor Reynolds has signed into law over the last, been about 6 months since the unrest and the protest and demonstrations last summer in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And some of the things that Iowans have presented to the government, to its government, about its handling of its citizens of color. We've talked about a few things in Iowa, including the fact that that if you are a black man in Iowa, you are 11 times more likely to end up incarcerated than if you were a white man. And then you had the blue bill that she brought up, which basically is exactly what we were asking for in the Black Lives Matter.
Pascha, if you can hear me, it looks like you froze up on your end.
Am I cutting out here?
Oh, there you go. You're coming back. Oh, I could hear you.
Mm.
Oh, there you go. Now you're back.
Let me try this again.
You're good. If you can hear me, you're good. Folks, we're gonna jump into a message from the United Nations. Pascha, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you. I'm not sure what.
All right, I think you're good now. You're back.
Okay.
But yeah, you mentioned a bill Governor Reynolds brought out.
Yes, the Back the Blue. Basically, it didn't do anything that it didn't cover anything that was being talked about during the demonstrations last summer, but it did allow police officers to sue private citizens for harassment. Basically it was what we were asking for during the demonstrations, but she signed the bill for police officers. And there was something else in there that if a state that basically was tried to decrease their law enforcement agencies or anything else, that they would not have state funding. There were a lot of things in the bill that were contrary to Iowa citizens and in favor of the police officers.
That one point you just made, defund the police is the catchy little slogan, but what they're talking about is to say there are tactics that need to be revised in police actions. And if they're not going to do it, we're going to take away funding. The state government said, if you do that on a local level, that we won't fund your city. So it was a way of strong arming people to say, don't get involved with interfering with police tactics. But if the change needs to happen and the change isn't happening, then what steps are left to be taken?
The steps. I mean, we're still the power. People are. It is the power does lie in the people. We are, in fact, the power behind the people who are governing us. So it's still up to the people to take that seriously and tell them that is not something that we will accept as citizens of Iowa. There's been a few bills. There's a few bills she signed a bill. Basically, all in all, the point is to continue to make it seem like instead of addressing what the demonstrations were about, to make it seem like the people who were demonstrating, and particularly people of color in Iowa, are a threat. And so that brings us back to the concealed carry, because that is not something that was being championed by supporters of Black Lives Matter or people of color in Iowa. That is something that is solely being championed by Republicans, which tend to be, especially in Iowa, 97% white. So that is what it is. Protect yourselves. The same thing as we had the lawmaker in the U.S. House, who said that he was not concerned about the insurrection that took place on January 6th because most of them were white, but he would have been concerned had they been Black. So
Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a constant mantra that runs through America because contrary to what people like to say, and I understand the sentiment behind it when they say, well, that's very un-American, that is actually not un-American at all. That has been American. That has been America since 1619 and before, and it's as American as apple pie.
And interesting. I touched on this just a second ago. So DC statehood is coming up again, and Senator Mike Round said, well, the founding fathers never intended for Washington, D.C. be a state. Bernice King with the King Foundation said, well, the founding fathers never intended me to be free. And I think that's just so interesting. Folks, times do change. Former Rep Karen Derry was on yesterday, and we're talking about divisive language now. There's a bill against divisive language where you can't say there's a thing called systemic racism because it might upset somebody in the room. Folks, that's the idea. We're supposed to be upset about this. And if someone doesn't know about it, they have to be educated about it. So they get upset about it. So we stop it. But to legislate even against the conversation about it, it boggles my mind.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because that was actually something that was proposed in the Iowa State House as well, which is to stop Iowa schools from teaching what they call divisive concepts. Well, the divisive concepts are the fact that systemic racism exists and it affects people of color. And so that is something we shouldn't talk about. So basically, instead of addressing the racism in the room, the idea is to continue to sweep it under the rug, which of course continues to disenfranchise people of color, marginalize already marginalized community, and to continue this systemic racism that continues things like 11-to-1 incarceration of Black people in Iowa, the fact that Black women are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, to talk about the fact that in 2015, 20% of medical students thought Black people felt less pain, to talk about the fact that that children of color happen to be thriving in this new virtual school because they can concentrate on school, and the systemic racism and oppression that they deal with in school being 3 times more likely to be suspended, being 5 times more likely to have some sort of consequences for minor infractions. They're not having to face that. So several studies have shown that they're actually thriving in this virtual environment as opposed to in school learning. So all of these things are affected by systemic racism of America. But if you sweep it under the rug, then we don't have to address it. We can just act as business as usual, and white supremacy can go on and thrive, which we see the results of that in the shooting in Atlanta, and again in the shooting in Boulder, where we have 2 white men who have murdered multiple people and yet have walked out alive under police escort, where Black and brown people are being shot down needlessly in the streets by police for doing nothing more than living.
And I mean, you look at, I saw that photo where it was saying, arrested, killed. And if it was a Black person, often unarmed Black person, they were shot dead. And the armed white man who was mass killing people, well, they got arrested or served lunch and all that other crap. So yeah,
absolutely.
And it's not, you can't, we're getting to a point where you just can't, well, it was just that one time though, or it was just that. And, there's a few bad apples. Trevor Noah's got a great line. He said, we wouldn't accept a few bad apples and airline pilots. Oh, they just crashed a couple planes.
Or surgeons.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody would go under the knife if somebody was like, "Well, this guy right here, he's a good surgeon. Good thing you got this one, because the other bad apple, he's killed a few people." That's just not.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but you're good thing you got this one. Yeah. It's. I mean, I don't know. It boggles the mind. There was a tweet out this morning, and it said.
Oh, go ahead.
The tweet said, "Sweet Iowa, I don't even recognize you anymore." So Tom Harkin was on this show last week for the 50th. Again, thank you, sir, for being on. But he said when he was elected, it was a purple state. And the first time I met him, he came to my house. He interviewed for the television version of Roske on Politics. And he said, it's still a purple state now. And even in that 7 years, it so much of Iowa has become a bastion for, and it to me, it's not conservative think. It is an outlier think, which is, I mean, why in the world would you want everyone to have concealed firearms? Why would you fight against something like diversity training? And they say, well, you can have diversity training, but not divisive language. Divisive language. You're going to police how someone teaches someone about racism. Yeah. Donald Trump tried to say the 1619 thing, you couldn't have it in school curriculums, which just blows my mind, folks. This is real history. Thomas Jefferson wrote a book called The Farm. It was equating the value of his land to the value of his slaves. And the slaves on his property, when they were 3, they started nursing older slaves. When they were 8, they started making nails. If they weren't making nails, they were beat until they were unconscious, these kids. And he said the 2 most valuable things I've got is my land and my slaves. So this big, Jefferson, the big, oh, he's the abolitionist. Well, when he turned about 42 years old, he stopped talking about that, and he started maximizing profits on free stolen labor. And people, well, you shouldn't talk about that. It's un-American. I, in fact, think it's absolutely American. We have to talk about the truth of what happened before we're ever going to be moving forward.
I have developed another platform on TikTok, which is amazing, actually, and gets less credit than it deserves for the movements that they make as a community, which is pretty cool. But I did one of these because I happen to be in Omaha, Nebraska, and in Omaha, in the middle of downtown Omaha, they have a giant sculpture, but it's a city block. And the entire sculpture is these covered wagons and horses and all of these settlers that are apparently going and moving and settling. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, what in the hell? I thought, this is because this is the history that we continue to teach. We continue to teach American history like it was these group of ragtag heroes that came over here and made a land out of nothing, instead of teaching it like it should be taught, which is it was a group of genocidal maniacs who came over here and killed everyone in their way so that they could take this land. We are on stolen land. We have stolen, this land is stolen. I didn't steal anything, neither did my ancestors, but this is stolen land, and these are not a group of heroes that came over here and developed the land. These are a group of people who came over here and killed everything in their way in order to take land. It's the way we teach the Alamo, like it was remember the Alamo. I remember the Alamo, and I know exactly what the story behind it is. And again, what we made in our history books, we teach the Alamo like, oh, and they survived and they stood against these savage Mexicans. No, that was Mexico. And Americans broke the rules like they weren't supposed to. And Mexico said, now you have to leave. And they said, no, we're not going anywhere. And they neglect, when they talk about the Alamo, they neglect to say that the Mexican soldiers harmed not one woman, not one child, and not one slave during that thing, but only against people who were fighting back against them when they told them to leave their land. It's the way we teach. It's a indoctrination into this America is the best of the best. America is somewhere that I love my country. And I've said this I did an op-ed in a local newspaper probably about 8 years ago, and talking about, because I got a lot of stuff about how, oh, well, you keep talking against America, so you must not. I know. I absolutely love America. I love my kids too, which is why I don't let them run wild and rampshod all over town. I teach them, I talk to them, I explain, and I correct behavior. That's what we do as parents, but we seem to not be able to understand that as American citizens. That's our job. Our job is to make America the country that we want it to be, not pretend that it is something that it is not. It is to pay attention, to make sure that if we sweep everything under the rug, we're not changing anything. We're not fixing anything. That's like the parent that's walking around Walmart while their kid is screaming and hollering and acting like a brat that we all can't stand. And then they're just shopping. Like it's not happening. That's not the way you change anything. That's not the way you fix anything. If we want America to be great, then we need to make it so. But it is not. And just saying it is, it doesn't make it either, because there's not magic words that just abracadabra, now you're great. And these are things that when Trump came into office, these are things that enabled and empowered and emboldened that a particular part and cusp of our country and I talked to somebody about that, and they said, well, you didn't even give Trump a chance. I said, you know what? I didn't have to, because when he said make America great again, that already caught me. If he would have said make America great, we would have had something to talk about. But he said make America great again. And as soon as he said that, I thought, okay, so who was it ever great for? Because it was never great for Black people. It was never great for Chinese people. It was never great for the Irish. It was never great for the Italian. Like every group has come here and faced persecution, faced marginalization. And now if you're Irish or Italian, I guess it's great to say that you're white, but if you were Irish and Italian in the 1800s, you were no more welcome than I was to apply for jobs, to live in certain areas, to do any of these things. We ride now over train tracks that are literally the graves of millions of Chinese workers that died and were just buried right where they stood, and the train tracks built over them. So it's not the Japanese internment camps. These are things that we need to talk about. And then when the shootings in Atlanta happened, everybody's like, oh, well, I can't even, now it's Asian people. No, it's been Asian people for about 150 years now, depending on when we were and where we were in history and what we decided as a country, who our enemy was at the time. And our enemy is always our own citizens, depending on what era you talk about.
And, folks, I may talk a good game, but only one of us here today has served in the armed forces. And that was our friend Pascha here, was a sergeant in the U.S. Army. So you've got the background, you've put in your time. Creative Visions. Let's give a shout out to Creative Visions. Why don't you tell folks about them and the good work they do over there?
Yes, Creative Visions. I want to say, and I hope to God I'm getting the address right. I'm pretty sure it's 1343. 13. And it is a community organization founded by Representative Akeo Abdul-Samad that gives out almost 300 meals a week that you can go to for tutoring for your children. They have a food pantry. They have knitting classes. Well, now that the pandemic is in, there's a few things that they're not doing right now, but hopefully in the next few months, they get to open back up to include dance classes, knitting classes, after school tutoring for children. They help with some financial needs of the community. Like I said, they feed more than 300, but 300, they actually deliver up to 300 meals a week. And they're just a very community-based organization that has been doing the work for about 28 years now. So if you are in the area, if you need some help, if you want to donate, please reach out to Creative Visions. They are a great organization that is putting their money where their mouth is.
And let's put an underline under that. If you've got some extra bucks, send them a check. Just send them a check. Make it out to Creative Visions and add a 0, because that money goes straight into the community. And Mr. Abdul-Samad has been there at the front lines for 50 years, but Creative Visions is an organization almost 3 decades now, and just an inspiring, fascinating group of committed individuals over there doing what they can to help. And as he would say, the struggle is real and we must win.
And we will.
Mr. Pascha Morgan, it's always good to see your face. I miss our trips to Zombie Burger. We got to do it again soon.
Absolutely. I do miss it. It's getting warm now, so we'll get together.
I love it. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Brit's Corner. Don't go anywhere. Thank you to the United Nations High Commission on Refugees for that video. And there she is, Britt Slater with Brit Corner. Happy Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday to you. How are you?
I'm good. Always happy to see your face. Our Uncle Jack, he's an in-law to me, my wife's Uncle Jack. He always says, well, my favorite part of your show is Brit's Corner.
Are you kidding? I have a real fan like this.
You've got a real fan, because he goes, your other stuff gets a little, in this, but he goes, I just watch her and I laugh and I think she's just great and full of energy. And every time I see him, he brings you up. So thank you for bringing joy to the show and to our viewers. And so grateful to have you on the show on Tuesday for Brit's Corner, Life Hacks and Snacks. How are you not going to like that?
It's so funny. I never, this is really what I'm doing, isn't it? Life hacks and snacks.
So what's on the docket for this week? We got these little peaks of springtime coming in, and it changes. You live out in California and you don't know what month it is. The weather's always 74 and beautiful. But as you know, moving back to Iowa, you know exactly what month it is. You know what the weather's going to be like. You know what the forecast is going to be like. And with these little pinpricks of sunshine coming through, we breathe a little better. We get to go outside. We get to experience things, and things start loosening up a little bit. So what's the Brit's Corner for Tuesday?
Exactly. Having the little bits of weather come in is just been so rejuvenating for my personal health. I'm sure everyone else's too. And so what I've always struggled with being a mom is everyone's like, oh, just take your kid out on a walk and, put him in the stroller and that'll be that. You'll be fine. Just go for a walk. And it works sometimes, a little short, brisk walk, but it takes a lot of work putting your kid in a stroller, right? So you want it to be a walk. So the weather has to be right. And when the weather is right, I would find that I was getting I already have a little bit of ADD. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just walking, and I just want to go back home. And I thought, well, what about like a podcast, And so for the last week, I was really, with this nice weather, I was listening to some podcasts, but I was using my phone and just sort of pushing the stroller with one hand and thinking, this is not going well. I cannot do this, listening like this. And I don't know, I hate the, what do you call them? Headphones that have the strings. They always get tied up and stuff. Oh, and they always get tangled in my purse and stuff.
It's a mess.
I know. I think I have 8 pairs, probably just at the bottom of my purse, honestly, just tangled up. And I was telling my husband, I was like, gosh, is there anything that'll I see people, businessmen and women rocking around in the grocery store with those, cool little headphones on. I was like, maybe I need a pair of those. And after some research, I found something called bone conducting headphones, wireless headphones.
That sounds intense.
Well, yeah, it does sound intense. Essentially, here they are. And, you just sort of rest it on your cheekbones. I always have this piece of hair here that just sort of, but you rest it on your cheekbones like this, and you go along your way. I mean, I don't even need to put my hair back. It doesn't really matter. It does a fine job. This kind of technology.
Wait, hold on. It didn't go in your ear though. I don't understand. No. How are you hearing anything?
No, it just rests right here. So it uses, essentially this technology uses your bones and your jawbone as sort of like a speakerphone. So it's really useful for people with hearing problems. My grandma's always complaining. She's always like, I just hear a bunch of noise around me, but I can't hear you. So anyway, I have a few pointers on my phone here. Yeah, I mean, it's.
So hold on, but let's back it up here. Yeah. I've never heard of this before. So what?
Crazy.
Let me give you a little peek into how this program works. Weekly guests like Miss Slater, I see, let me give you a heads up what you want to talk about. So I get this email last night, and we're all doing a million other things. I'd like to say that this show is my sole source of income. It's not. So I'm focusing on other things. I saw your email, bone headphones. I mean, I don't know what the heck it is.
Yeah.
So is there a speaker in it, or how does it transmit?
Well, first of all, I should mention that this company is called Aftershocks, and apparently it's a Chinese company supporting Asian-owned companies that got their start with making headphones for the military. So that's interesting. But I don't really know. I mean, I wish I did research on that. I'm not a scientist, but sound travels through the bone of your jaw in the form of vibrations on your inner ear. Okay, so that's what's going on. And it's just great. Because
Okay. Let's just take a pause here. I'd never heard of this before. So you're telling me you put those on and you listen to a podcast and it sounds fine.
yes, it honestly sounds fine. And the reason why I got these was because I didn't want to necessarily, not just because the headphones were tangling and messy, but I wanted to still hear cars around me when I'm walking with my son, because as you know, drivers are crazy. And so, yeah, this is a great option for that. And I can hear, so basically it's so weird because I can still hear everything around me, but it sounds fine. Honestly, it's not like, it's not like amazing, it's not like it's something's, vibrating in your inner ear, but it's perfect. It's not bad at all. And they say these are great for people with hearing issues, which is funny. Now, I have heard the cons of this. These maybe aren't the best if you're in like a super loud situation, right? So if you're outside, if you're in a supermarket where it's not like crazy, just don't take these to a bar. Don't take these to, a subway, maybe on a commute. That's not the best, and they stay perfectly fine. There's nothing like suctioning my ears. They're just sitting on my head.
Well, what it sounds like too, it's additive sound. It's not dampening sound. You put a pair of Bose on that I directed their commercials for. Thank you to Bose for that big check you sent me a long time ago. But you put those on, and a lot of the reason it sounds so good is that they dampen out the rest of the sound. But you're saying these things are just like they are. Oh, man, I'm surprised. I've never heard of this in my life. There you go. This is why I love this show. We're learning something.
Well, I think I had heard of it, but I don't know why. I just thought they were for business people. Just like, I just didn't. I thought, and you can also make calls on these too. So it is like your typical.
But so, and you're saying, so again, let's talk about a couple things with safety, because we live close to a park here. If you're pushing a stroller, watch driveways, folks. People backing out might not see you. And we've had a lot of that, and like people slamming on the brakes, almost hitting kids. Yeah. Folks are coming out. We get used to in the winter just putting in gear, going to the grocery store. Watch the sidewalks. If you're driving, if you're pushing a stroller, watch those cars backing up. They probably don't see you. Act like they don't see you.
Walk towards the traffic instead of away, with your back to the traffic, in case you can see a Corolla DeVille going down the street. You can veer out of the way.
Yeah, walk so you can see oncoming traffic. So if they're on their text phones, but they shouldn't be, and they start veering onto the sidewalk, you can jump out of the way. If you've got your back to them, you got no time to react. Good point. But with this thing, so you're saying you can push Little Vega, you can be out there, but you can hear your surroundings.
Yes. It's great. Sweat resistant. They're very lightweight, by the way. Yeah.
What sort of price are we talking about? We're
talking about anywhere from about 100 to 160, but I got these for 130. So it's a price, it's something to. That's it. Yeah, this was a present. So yeah, I think it's worth it though, because honestly, ever since I got these just for this last week, I listened to a podcast just like 30 minutes and the walk's done. I'm like, oh, cool. So before it was always a real struggle.
I take our little ones on walks, some of the best times of my life, but it's not a headphone thing. There needs to be some constant interaction. I got to get her some more Cheerios, or I got to point out stuff to get people interested. It's a very active walk.
Good mood, don't they?
Cheerios.
Good spirits for sure.
Bag of Cheerios.
So it's got about an 8-hour battery too, so that's pretty good.
So next week we're going to talk about something really fascinating. Why don't you give people a heads up? It'll be on Brit's Corner next Tuesday.
Yeah. So this month, March, is Iowa History Month, and Governor Ray of Iowa, the former Governor Ray, he was really celebrated for spearheading Southeast Asians immigrating to Iowa. And one of those Southeast Asians is my dear husband, Derek, and his family. They are Cambodian refugees, and they survived the Cambodian genocide. And they lived at a refugee camp in Thailand, which is where Derek was born, actually. The stories that Derek's wonderful mom, her name is Champen, has is incredible, Brent. Like, I mean, literally just going over there, we always talk about, she always has different stories to tell us of her time literally escaping on foot from Cambodia to the Thailand border, being pregnant. And also it's quite an interesting story to hear about their process of immigrating to America. They landed in California, what Governor Ray did to bring them over here when it was quite a controversial time here in Iowa. Not everyone was for it. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. I feel privileged to be a part of this family with Darrett. They're incredible people, and it's just really disheartening to, see these recent Asian attacks on Asians, because our history is riddled with scapegoating Asian citizens and treating them badly. So I think it's worth talking about Asians and their history and how we can support them.
Absolutely. The recent spate of violence directed toward Asians is disgusting. It is revolting, and the people should be ashamed of themselves. Governor Bob Ray, I had the good fortune of meeting him just a few months before he passed. He's a former Republican governor, and he, put forth, the IPERS program that state workers here have the benefit of, which is a retirement plan, et cetera, et cetera. He did a lot of great work, including this immigration stance that you said was controversial at the time. Yeah. But folks were welcomed in Iowa. He made sure of it with legislation, and have created homes. And, some of the founding members of Des Moines right now are thanks to that policy. So we are grateful for Mr. Ray and his inspirational leadership then, and for those folks in that community for being here now. So looking forward to that conversation.
Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Well, and Britt, again, it is a pleasure to always see you. And what is it called? What headphones?
Bone conducting headphones. Bone conducting, Bluetooth wireless headphones. Isn't that crazy? It uses your jaw as a speaker.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll try it. I have to try it now, so I'm going to try it. Bone conduct. Yeah, it's a little on the nose for me as far as a marketer. Bone conduct. I want to come up with a fancier name than saying your bone is the speaker. But I'm fascinated. I will look into it. Britt, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks, Jack. Uncle Jack?
Uncle Jack.
Uncle
Jack, they're in Florida right now. Jack and Jan will give them a wave and a shout out. They'll be watching.
You're my reason. Thank you.
What's that?
I said, you're my reason, Jack.
I love it. Well, we love Jack and Jan. We're sending love to them. We're sending love to you, viewers. Thank you for tuning in and enjoying another program with us. We will see you back here tomorrow morning. It's Wednesday, so we got from the UK, Lisa Marks is going to be talking about, we were talking Oscar noms last week, more fun stuff with Lisa Marks, that and so much more. Folks, we're rooting for you. We'll see you tomorrow.